Hello Internet, this is Daniel with Driving Dragons, and today I'm just going to go over a quick list of tips for the beginning game master for running their first campaign. Talk to you on the other side. Okay, so starting a new campaign and being a new game master can be a little intimidating at times, just because you have to run everything, especially if you're one of these groups that's kind of old school, where it's like, hey, me and my group of friends got together, we're going to play, and none of us have really ever played, or one of us has played a couple of times. We're just trying to figure it out. It can be real intimidating then, just because as a game master, a lot of times you feel like everybody's fun kind of sits on your shoulders, especially in this kind of current climate we've got, where the game master is the whipping boy of the players. This is really, to me, I think it's probably one of the most toxic things that exists in the tabletop space, is this obsession with the players getting everything they want, this excessive catering to players. So that can put a lot of pressure, especially on a new game master, because they think they're going to be terrible, they think their game's going to suck, they're going to lose their group, they're going to piss off all their players, all this fun stuff. But it's really not that difficult, especially if you follow just a couple of quick tips that can make this a smoother and easier operation for you. Tip one, and I've said this a dozen times, is, and actually I'm going to use a different version of it. Instead of just saying pick the right game, what I'm going to say is this first tip is stay within your genre. As a beginning game master, you don't need to be going in trying to find the way to run cyberpunk in medieval era. You don't need to be trying to find a way to adapt Traveler to boats on the high seas for pirates. And you don't need to be trying to take Dungeons and Dragons and taking it from being epic heroic fantasy into a realm of more gritty realism, because that realism comes at a cost, and that cost is having to change a lot of those rules and manipulate the way it works. You've got enough on your plate as a new GM without having to adapt and change a bunch of rules. Same thing with your players, is you don't need to, a lot of times, if you're a new GM, a lot of times you're going to have a lot of new players. And what you don't need is for them to be further confused as you're trying to figure out how you're going to make your rulings and how you're going to run your table. They don't need to be confused with a whole bunch of really massive changes to the rule book in order to in order to make your Dungeons and Dragons game modern era. So that's number one. Number one is stay within the genre of whatever system you've chosen to run, and stick to kind of the core of what it should be. Number two, the next one we're going to talk about here is restrict your players. I've spoken about this before too. Restrict your players. You've got to keep things simple so that you can run a good, clean game and focus on running a good, clean game. And by doing so, you're gonna have to hold your players back a little bit. Even as an experienced game master, I run a pretty simple rule with my table. You cannot use anything that is not in a source book that I personally have. I must personally have a copy of whatever source book you want to pull stuff out of. You're not going to show up to my table with, Tasha's Cauldron of 14 game breaking and, messed up rules and alternate endings, and pick out a bunch of stuff you want to do when I haven't even seen this book. So a good rule for beginning game masters is to keep it simple and restrict your players. Restrict them within the world by saying, hey, look, we're only going to use core rule book themes. The core rule book life paths, core rule book races, core rule book equipment, core rule book, whatever the case may be, depending classes, whatever the system may be that you're on. So keep your players into a tightly confined space. And that may not even take place of a, say, core rule book. That may take the place of a settings book. So, for instance, you may go in to play Oriental Adventures in Dungeons & Dragons and say, all right, we're restricting you specifically to the classes and races that are allowed within this particular campaign setting. And that can help you a lot in moderating what goes on at the table. It gives you a lot less that you have to make rulings on. If somebody's not pulling a spell or ability out of some obscure book you've never seen. So restrict your players down to whether it's only the books I own, or only the core rule books, or only this particular campaign setting, or hey, this setting only has these. Don't be afraid to put some restrictions on the player. Number 3 is prepare. It doesn't matter if you're running a module, which I would actually recommend running modules for your first first couple of sessions as game master, just because it takes a lot of the work off of you, and you can see some of the work that you have to do as a homebrew game master. But if you're going to run a module, you need to read that module. You need to prepare ahead of time. You need to come up with some NPCs to fill in some of the blanks that are left in the module. If it says there's not a person here, where a player may decide they want to go off and ask the locals or something, you need to kind of put some notes in the margins, or have a notebook separate to your module where you've got notes that go along with your module, so that you're well prepared. And so that for these general things, you're not having to do a whole bunch of ad-libbing. You never want to be seat of the pants GM to start with. But you definitely don't want to be seat of the pants, ad-lib, everything is improvised DM, when you already have enough trouble keeping all the rules straight because it's the first time you've done this. So make sure you have plenty of preparation ahead of time. You know what's going, you know where it's going. Next tip, use a linear storyline. Don't try to sandbox. Don't do it to yourself. Don't worry about somebody crying about railroading, because a linear story is way easier for you to keep on track. It has a lot fewer random variables that you have to deal with. It's going to have a lot less improvisation that you have to come up with. I'm not saying that you need to make sure that a player goes from point A to point B to point C, but you really need to make sure they go from point A to 1B, 2B, 3B, or 4B. And then they go from whichever B to 1C, 2C, 3C, or 4C. Now, a flowchart can be one of your best friends in this. Make a flowchart. Even if you're running a module, make a flowchart. Read through it and make a flowchart. If they make this decision here, it's going to lead them to this. If they make this decision here, it's going to lead them here. And it's going to have this effect on whatever. And it's going to change the situation in this manner. A flowchart can help you very easily, because behind your screen, you can look down and you can see, okay, they did this, this, and this, which means that the only 2 or 3 places they could go are these 3 places. These are the only 3 places the story can progress. And then you can just make it to where if they're going to outside or other places, that it's basically not helpful for them to go there in terms of advancing the storyline. It's not that there's nothing there, it's just that in terms of advancing the story, they're not going to find anything because they've made these other decisions. So that linear story progression is just going to help you out a tremendous amount on your first game. So you really just need to try and keep everything as streamlined as possible so that you can have as much knowledge as possible prepared ahead of time. And then the next thing is, don't forget to have fun. Remember, this is for you to have fun as much as it is for the players to have fun. That goes right back to the thing I was saying about the kind of toxic nature that the community has taken when it comes to game masters. You're not the whipping boy for the group. You're not a professional game master. You're not being paid to provide them with a good time. You're there to have a good time just like they are. So make sure you're having fun. make sure you have a say in it. Make sure that you are running a story you're comfortable with. You know, it's not out of line for you to get your group together and have kind of a proto session 0 where you're saying, hey, I want to run this type of game. I want to, I'd like to GM this time. What's everybody thinking? And for somebody to come up with, say, hey, I always thought it would be cool to play Arabian Nights or something like that, and you turn around and say, you know what, I'm just not comfortable doing Arabian Nights. I'm not, I never read the Thousand Tales. I never, I'm not super familiar with the cultures. I don't really know how the things work. I don't even really understand the architecture or just really anything about it. I'm just not comfortable running a campaign in Arabian Nights. That's perfectly acceptable. Same thing. Hey, I want to run. We want to run a high chrome game. I mean, we want to have maybe even an entire group of cyber psychos playing Cyberpunk. And you may turn around and say, hey, look, that sounds really cool. Maybe in the future, but at the very beginning, I'd like to run a regular Cyberpunk game because there's not even a lot of rules for what a cyber psycho can do, because they're kind of, basically if you become one, you turn into an NPC in the regular core rules. I'm not even really super comfortable with a lot of cyber psychosis in my game to start with, just because I'm kind of new and this is the first time I've done this. So that's a cool idea for us to back burner. I'd love to talk with you about it later, and maybe it's something we can run after this first game and I'm a little bit more comfortable. There is no reason why you shouldn't be able to sit there and say, look, it's not going to be fun for me if I have to spend 40 hours a week putting in just tremendous amounts of effort to even be able to run the game because of all the extra stuff that people want in this game. So that's another thing, is don't forget that you're there to have fun too, and that your fun is just as important as everybody else's. I think I'm going to call it right there for this one. That right there is just a good set of beginning tips. I mean, outside of the obvious, which is take some time to read those rule books, take some time to know the rules, know the system, and understand what's going on. Outside of those, which is just the most core of the core, the best things you can do are to run a session 0, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then just step in and homebrew as little as possible. Keep your game within its same genre. Remember that you're there to have fun too, and be a little bit more restrictive with your players, and these things can help you out tremendously when it comes to running that first game. If I missed something, let me know below. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe. Share this with the new GMs in your life, and hopefully we'll see a new crop of game masters come up here and start to let some of us old guys play again. Talk to you later.